Today we're going to look at the 2019 free response exam. So this is question 3, delimiters. Okay, so first of all, I want you guys to go to my course website. I've put a link in the description, and you're going to get 2 files. So you're going to get this AP CSA 2019 PDF that's got the question in it. And you're going to go over here to question 3, and you get this delimiters.zip. So that's got the code framework in it. All right, so once you got those 2 files, let's go ahead and look at the question. So the question's right here, and this one's pretty interesting. It involves delimiters, so I'm sure some of you have seen this. In fact, if you've taken any kind of algebra course, you've probably seen this where you have an open parentheses and you need to match it up with the closed parentheses. And if your parentheses are out of order, then your math equation won't work. So it turns out this turns up quite a bit in, not just math, but programming. So if you have any experience with HTML, you know that you have opening tags and closing tags, and the two must match up. So it's a question that involves this. So make sure you read through it carefully and you understand it. And then let's go ahead and look at what they want us to do. Okay, so they give us this delimiters class. They specify the open and closed limiters, and they want us to write 2 methods, I believe. So they want us to write get delimiters list and then is balanced. Okay, so part A is this section where we write the get delimiters list method. And I believe in this case, they give us a series of elements in the form of a one-dimensional array. So these are of type string. And they ask us to go through and say, all right, just go through and pick out these elements which happen to be either open delimiters or closed delimiters. So, here we have an open delimiter, so that would be selected and placed into an array list. And then, obviously x plus y is not. This bracket, closed bracket, is a closed delimiter, so this would be, selected and then put into this array list. And then, multiply 5 is not, so that would be ignored. So essentially, we need to loop across tokens, and we need to match up and say, okay, if it's an open delimiter, closed delimiter, we take it out, we put it into some array list. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the code. So first thing to note is that this method get delimiters list, so this returns array list of type string. So that's probably the first thing I should do is I should make an array list, right? We need to return it. So go ahead and do that. Array list string. I guess you could just call it result. Gets new array list string. Okay, so there we go. So now I've got a place to put, those open delimiters and closed delimiters that we're selecting out from this one-dimensional array tokens. All right, next step is I've got to loop across this one-dimensional array tokens, and I've got to consider each token in turn. A couple ways I could do it. I could use a for loop. I could use a for each loop. I think in this case, I might be okay with using, let me use a for each loop. So for each. So for string item in tokens. Okay, so what are we doing? We're saying, if that token happens to be open delimiter, then we go ahead and we put it into our results array list. Also, if it happens to be a closed delimiter, we put it into our array list result. So I need to make it conditional and say, all right, well, if item.equals, and then say open delimiter, open del, or say, right, well, item.equals closed del, right, closed delimiter. Then, that tells us we need to go ahead and put it inside that array list. So it's just result.add. We just put in the item. Okay. And then once that whole for each loop is done, we can go ahead and return our results array list. So just return results. Okay, so that's pretty much it for part A. Let's go ahead and compile and see if it works. So let me run it and see what the output is. Okay, open, close, q, slash q, slash q. I think that's right. Let me go ahead and just compare it to the question. So in the examples they give, right, so they say, okay, here's the input, and, the output's going to be open parentheses, close parentheses. So I see I get that, here's the tokens that we have, and then we should get, q, slash q, slash q. So turns out that, it seems like it's the correct answer, so that means my method's correct. Okay, let's go on to part B. So take a look at that. Right, the method is balanced. So it returns true when the given delimiters happen to be balanced and returns false otherwise. So that depends on two logical conditions here. When you're traversing from first to last, there's no point at which there are more closed delimiters than open delimiters. So it looks like we need to count up the number of open delimiters and number of closed delimiters. And then it's balanced if the number of open delimiters is equal to the total number of closed delimiters. Yeah, I mean, in both of these logical statements, it seems like they both depend on the fact that you need to count up the number of open delimiters and closed delimiters. So that's my first take on this, is I'm going to have to loop across this array list of delimiters and just, count up the number of open, count up the number of closed. If at any point I have more closed than open, that tells me it's false immediately. I can just, get out of that method straight away. However, if I get to the end and I find that I have an equal number of open and closed, that tells me it's true. If it's not equal, then I simply return false. So that's my algorithm that I think I should run. Okay, so I need to count up the number of open, number of closed. So I also need to, this returns a Boolean. So let me take care of that first. So let's say Boolean result, I'll just set equal to false. Okay, as I mentioned before, I need to count up the number of open and number of closed delimiters. So let me just make a couple variables for that. Int open, just call it open. Right, keep it simple. Int close, and just 0 for close. Okay, so it seems to me that I need to loop across this delimiters array list, and then I need to figure out, all right, if it's open, I increment open. If it's a closed delimiter, increment close. And then, if at any point I have more closed than open, I can simply return false. I can get out of there. And then once I'm finished with that entire loop, I can go ahead and compare the number of open, number of closed, and then make a determination from there. Again, I have a choice here. I could use a for loop or a for each loop. I think I'm going to try it with a for each loop. So let's go ahead and do that for a string item delimiters. Okay, so if my item happens to be an open delimiter, so if item.equals open, I go ahead and increment open, so open plus plus. Otherwise, so else if, wait a minute, sorry, this is a mistake. Open del, good thing I caught it. Okay, otherwise, if item.equals close del, right, we increment close, so close plus plus. So that takes care of my count. Now, if at any point I have, the number of close being greater than the number of open, that, I can just immediately get right out of there. So if, we have a case where close is greater than open, I can just get right out of there and say return false. So that just exits me immediately from that loop, immediately from the method, and we're done. So we can just, say we're done at that point. False. However, if we get through that entire loop, and now we need to figure out, okay, well, is the number of delimiters, is open equal to close? So let me go ahead and make it conditional. So if open equals close, that tells us that, it is balanced. So I can say that my result true. And then, after that, we're pretty much done. So I can just say return whatever the result is. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and compile and run, see if it works. First of all, let me go ahead and run this delimiters test. That's false. Okay, I think that is right. So here, example 1. Okay. Example 1 is true. Example 2, false. Example 3, false. Okay, so it seems to me that it works. Let me go ahead and run the test bench. So I've got a JUnit test bench here, so I'm going to go ahead and run that and see what we get. All right, so I got 10 green checks, so that tells me my code is fine. Okay, so that concludes the 2019 free response question 3 delimiters. It is complete. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.